This Saturday from the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles, California. At the time of this recording, we have two Money in the Bank ladder matches. We have a Women's Intercontinental Championship match, and we have an All-Star Tag Team match that will main event the show, featuring the Never Seen 17, the man who's going to ruin wrestling, the last real champion of WWE. It is Money in the Bank 2025. Let's get right to it with the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match, which you will see this year is a theme in the women's and men's Money in the Bank ladder match. Is WWE has done a lot of call-ups lately or has signed a lot of free agents, and these are young wrestlers for the most part, with some veterans mixed in there, but there's a lot of youth right now, especially on the Monday Night Raw roster. And there's a lot of young girls in here looking for their first opportunity in a potential women's world championship. We have from Monday Night Raw, Roxanne Perez, the prodigy, Stephanie Valkyr, who just recently signed with the brand, and Mommy herself, Rhea Ripley. For the Friday Night SmackDown side, we have the new debuting Julia, who of course was in NXT for a little bit, has been in WWE for about a year. You have Naomi, and of course, you have Little Miss Bliss, Alexa Bliss. Those are the six superstars in this field. Alexa Bliss, Naomi, Rhea Ripley, former world champion. Alexa Bliss and Naomi have competed in multiple Money in the Bank ladder matches. I don't recall Rhea Ripley ever competing in a Money in the Bank ladder match. I could be wrong about that. And then obviously, Stephanie Valkyr, Julia, and Roxanne Perez combined have been officially on the main roster for like a month. And all three of them, even though Roxanne Perez and Julia were in the Royal Rumble, and obviously Roxanne was in the Elimination Chamber, officially all three of them have been on a Raw or SmackDown roster as a call up for about a month. And I think one of those three ladies is going to win. You know, there was a report out there that Triple H does not believe so much in the Money in the Bank briefcase concept, which I don't understand, because I think Money in the Bank is one of the most exciting concepts in WWE. Whenever there's a championship match, when the Money in the Bank contract is around, and you know that champion is on the same brand as the briefcase holder, there is always that sense that there could be a cash in. I love the adrenaline of that. But if you look at Triple H's history, right, of how he's booked Royal Rumbles, and I talked about this at the end of the Royal Rumble, where essentially in both the 2023 and 2024 women and men's Royal Rumble matches, the final four competitors have always gone on to have a big year in WWE. One of those examples in 2024 was a Jade Cargill, Liv Morgan. Obviously, we know Liv Morgan went on to become Women's World Champion, had the storyline with Dominic Mysterio and Judgment Day. I see that being the same case here for Roxanne Perez, who was, the last to be eliminated before Charlotte Flair won the 2025 Women's Royal Rumble. I think Roxanne Perez being in Elimination Chamber, even though she was an early elimination in that match, is also a good sign for her future. And she is my pick here. I think WWE sees her as the prodigy. I think they see her as the next main future star here in the business. She's on the flagship show, if you will, at this point, Monday Night Raw on Netflix. And so I think Roxanne Perez is going to be this cunning heel. She had a long reign as the NXT Women's Champion. And I do think Roxanne Perez, you are looking at somebody who is going to be the next potential Women's World Champion, cash in on Io Sky at some point, who the Money in the Bank has this weird thing. And the funny part is, Io Sky, the current champion, Tiffany Stratton, also on SmackDown, is obviously last year's Women's Money in the Bank holder. Um, the Money in the Bank is a funny thing of if you've won Money in the Bank and cashed in and became world champion, you have also, for the most part, been cashed in on. Think about Edge being cashed in on by CM Punk. Uh, think about I don't think CM Punk was cashed in on at 2011 by Alberto Del Rio. Think about Alberto Del Rio, who cashed in on, right? He got cashed in on by Dolph Ziggler. You know, you think about Drew McIntyre. He was obviously cashed in on by Damian Priest. Drew McIntyre won Money in the Bank last year and cashed in on Damian Priest. So there's that revolving door. Think about Seth Rollins, who won Money in the Bank, and then he was cashed in on by Dean Ambrose. So there's a weird cycle there of Money in the Bank winners who've gone on to win world champions that have also been cashed in on. I think the same will be true here for Io Sky as Roxanne Perez. Again, I think she's the favorite. I think the other one that may be the favorite coming out of it is Julia or Stephanie Valkyrie. Again, I think one of those three women. I think the one least likely to win is Rhea Ripley, just because she just had a long reign as Women's World Champion. I know she wants to get back to Io Sky. She doesn't need the briefcase. I think a wild card may be Alexa Bliss. I don't know if she's going to be involved in the Wyatt family or not. It seems like she's getting some relationship with Charlotte Flair there that sort of takes the connection for me off the page. So that's where I'm at with the woman. My prediction is Roxanne Perez from Monday Night Raw wins the briefcase. Now, over on the men's side, we have from Friday Night SmackDown, Solo Sikoa, Andrade, and LA Knight. Yeah. And then from Monday Night Raw, we have Seth Rollins, we have Zero, Mieiro, and Penta, and we have El Grande Americano. Now, I do think there are two potential winners for the men's side of the Money in the Bank briefcase this year. One of them is El Grande Americano, or maybe they do something where El Grande gets knocked out and Chad Gable appears or something and, tries to climb up the ladder. I think that would be a really cool sixth spot, if I do say so myself. But he's not my pick for this match. The way I look at it, El Grande Americano is already in this feud with luchadors, if you will. I think a bunch of luchadors are going to come out, eventually attack him, maybe at SummerSlam or something, and unmask him. There's going to be a big unveiling and a big PLE. I don't think he's going to win this match. I think CM Punk and Sami Zayn and that crew, after Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker wreak havoc, the CM Punk and Sami Zayn are going to stop Seth Rollins from cashing in the briefcase. I think that the plan is to eventually reunite Penta and Rey Fenix as a tag team. As much as I like Penta, he's at Intercontinental Championship battles. He's super over. I just don't think he's ready for a world championship run yet. I think it's too soon. So take those guys out. I think obviously Andrade is not going to win the Money in the Bank briefcase. I don't see him ever being a world champion in WWE. He's sort of there to be there. And obviously Solo Sikoa is dealing with his feud with Jacob Fatu, which I think eventually Solo and JC Mateo are going to turn on Fatu. That's going to be a blood feud that could lead to a matchup between those two at SummerSlam. So logically, I think the winner of the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, now again, could Seth Rollins win? He could, but I think it would almost be a repeat of the 2014 Authority storyline. And I'm already on record that I think Seth Rollins is facing Jey Uso for the World Championship at SummerSlam, and that's where Rollins wins the championship. So I think he will be pissed off that CM Punk and Sami Zayn cost him the Money in the Bank briefcase, but I don't think he necessarily needs the briefcase because I do think he will get the world championship eventually. LA Knight, yeah, has to win the Money in the Bank briefcase over on the Blue Brand side, or we will riot. Because this is LA Knight's third straight year being in Money in the Bank. 2023, he was obviously the favorite going in. 2024, along with Drew McIntyre, he was one of the other favorites going in. He's been right there. He's been on the cusp. He's a former two-time United States champion. He's had those bumping long roads, and this will be a perfect way to get in the briefcase and to establish LA Knight as the mainstay, whether it is on SmackDown eventually because John Cena does hold that championship, or whether it is on Monday Night Raw. Maybe there's a heel turn there for LA Knight as champion. Because the babyface roster is so stacked right now with Jey Uso as world champion, as John Cena as the undisputed champion. I do think Cody Rhodes, by the way, is going to take that championship off of John Cena at SummerSlam. I've said that before. I've been on it ever since the night after WrestleMania 41. That's been my prediction. So at this point in time, excuse me, I know I talked about The Money in the Bank briefcase, finding a way. John Cena's obviously been cashed in on multiple times. He is also a Money in the Bank briefcase holder in 2012. The question is going to be, does LA Knight turn heel? Does he cash in on a heel Cena? Does he wait for a champion that we don't even expect to be champion to cash in the Money in the Bank briefcase in on right now? I don't know. Did El Grande Americano win the championship and try to quickly cash in on Jey Uso? Like, we don't know the answer to it. I think the most likely answer, though, is LA Knight will win the Money in the Bank briefcase and he will hold the briefcase for a while. I think this will be a situation, maybe not as long as Damian Priest, though potentially. But I think LA Knight is going to get seasoning, all like Tiffany Stratton with the briefcase. Oh, like I think Roxanne Perez will get with the briefcase, where I don't think this is going to be an immediate cash in from LA Knight. Yeah. Then we get to the Women's Intercontinental Championship between Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria, who had a very good match at Backlash for the Women's Intercontinental Championship, which is where Becky Lynch poked Lyra Valkyria in the eye, yet Lyra Valkyria still rolled her up. Eventually, Becky Lynch would take her out with the disarmor. I do wish that Lyra would sell the arm a little bit more after that attack. She didn't really sell it, which sort of disappointed for me. I also wish this would be a submission match more so than just a regular one-on-one rematch. But there is a stipulation to this, which basically states that if Lyra beats Becky, Becky will no longer challenge for the Women's Intercontinental Championship as long as Lyra is champion. And then if Becky Lynch wins, Lyra Valkyria has to raise her hand. And they made a big deal about that part of the stipulation, which is why I do think, similar to what they did with Braun Breaker and Sami Zayn last year, where they ran the match on Money in the Bank, Sami Zayn knocked off Breaker, Breaker comes back, beats him at SummerSlam, begins his reign as Intercontinental Champion. I think the same thing happens here. I thought Becky was going to go over at Backlash, but they extended the feud with Lyra being the champion. I must say that Lyra Valkyria has gotten better with her mic skills and her communicating with the crowd in this feud with Becky Lynch. I mentioned it going into Backlash, but it does feel like to me that Lyra and Becky do have great in-ring chemistry, and they have even better chemistry, in my opinion, on the microphone. And I don't know if it's just because they're both from Ireland, and Lyra and Becky are good friends, obviously, backstage, and Lyra feels very comfortable with the man, but as great as a reign as Lyra has had as Women's Intercontinental Champion, it's lasted over 5 months. It is time now to get the championship offer. It's time for Becky Lynch to be, the holder of the workhorse version of the Women's Championship and for her to never defend it as a heel, which I think would be a pretty good gimmick. She's already said she doesn't want to wrestle in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She only wrestles in the big towns, which is obviously the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles, California. So I think this will be a very similar match to what they had at Backlash. I think Becky wins. My guess is, and my hope is that Becky makes Lyra tap out with the disarmor, and that Lyra does make Becky Lynch raise her hand, and maybe we get a situation where Lyra turns heel and becomes Becky Lynch's manager. Becky makes her carry around the Women's Intercontinental Championship or what have you, and then we get another match where Lyra finally breaks away from Becky. We get the rubber match now with Becky as the champion. Lyra now is away from her, trenches as her henchman or whatever it is, and then Lyra can get the championship back. That way, that's the way I would book this feud. And then we get to the main event, which was set up at Saturday Night's main event a couple weeks ago, where John Cena basically told Jey Uso that the way he's going to ruin wrestling is by having a YouTuber win the World Heavyweight Championship. And Cody Rhodes had enough of it. He returned after we hadn't seen him since WrestleMania. And now we get the tag team match between Cody Rhodes and the world champion Jey Uso, who Jey Uso just took a beating from Bronson Reed, Braun Breaker, and Seth Rollins. Suffered multiple tsunamis this past Monday night on Raw. His ribs are going to be taped. Logan Paul with those right hands is going to be targeting that. I suspect Logan Paul to do a lot of wrestling in this match, for John Cena to be the chicken shit guy that sort of runs away. Maybe he barely gets into the match until he has to. And I don't think him and Jey Uso are going to walk up very much at all, because WWE does have a ELE coming up at the end of June in Saudi Arabia called Night of Champions. I predict we're going to see at that event the WWE champion John Cena face off against the world champion Jey Uso, and that's how we get there. That's why it's called Night of Champions, is my guess. Even though I know they're doing the thing with the crown jewel thing to decide, who is the crown jewel champion. I think they could always run that back in Perth in October. Um, you know, the way I see it, I think we get Cena and Jey Uso at Night of Champions. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of that interaction here. I think Jay and Logan Paul and Cody and Logan Paul, who obviously have history, will do a lot of the wrestling here. And I'm pretty undecided on who's going to win this match. I don't know if it's going to be a clean finish or not. I think obviously it would not be John Cena getting pinned if Cody and Jey Uso win. I think it's Logan Paul getting pinned. I don't think Cody will take the fall here. Jey Uso will be all beat up, and it will be a storyline as he heads into his World Championship match with Gunther in Phoenix, Arizona this coming Monday night on Raw. There's obviously going to be a rep bump because there's more rep bumps now in John Cena matches than there are when Roman Reigns was the undisputed WWE champion. That title match is now essentially the rep bump title. But I can see a scenario where Logan Paul goes for the brass knock for the referee out. Cody goes to knock him out. Cena stops him or something with a kick in the balls. And then they cover Jey Uso with a shot to the championship. Cena cheats to win. Jey Uso wants a rematch against Cena, who picks up the fall against Jey at Night of Champions, and that's how we get there. As the never seen 17, the last real champion, and the guy that everybody hates, the founder of Prime, the YouTuber that nobody likes as a wrestler. This is all part of John Cena's plan to ruin wrestling. John Cena and Logan Paul go over in a very entertaining match, in my opinion. John Cena has always liked Logan Paul. He was on Impulsive, obviously. They have a good relationship. They talked about they wanted to do a one-on-one match with each other for years. And so the fact that these two chicken shit eels are teaming up against two of the biggest baby faces in the company, I love it. There's going to be a lot of yeeting in the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles, California, but the never seen 17-time world champion, who, yes, CM Punk did sell his soul to a bald fraud in Dwayne The Rock Johnson, will come away victorious. So again, this year's Women's Money in the Bank ladder match winner, I have being Roxanne Perez. For the men, I have it being L.A. Knight. Yeah, I do have Becky Lynch winning the Women's Intercontinental Championship from Lyra Valkyria via a disarmer. Lyra will raise her hand, and we may get a managerial situation there for a little bit between Becky and Lyra. And then John Cena, after a title belt off the face after the referee gets knocked down, pins Jey Uso. John Cena and Logan Paul walk out of Money in the Bank victorious. It leads to John Cena versus Jey Uso one-on-one at Night of Champions in Saudi Arabia later this month. Like that clip from the Brand's World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brand's World podcast right here on YouTube.